Hello everyone from the Novedge team. Welcome to today's webinar. Are you ready to enhance your 3ds Max productivity? SiNi software team will walk through their workflow tools and their advantages within a production environment. They will also present a sneak peek of few further products to be released in 2017. The software featured in this webinar are Ignite, Proxy, Forensic, and Cyclone. Our webinar presenter today, Simon Donaghy, has over 20 years in games programming, TV, VFX, Viz, and film experience. As CTO, is responsible for the software engineering team and development of Autodesk plugins for 3ds Max and Maya. Before forming SiNi, he worked for Glowfrog and Squint Opera, as well as CEO and creative director of USA Studios, 3D Pusher, and Herding Cats. Great pedigree. Before we get going, here's an overview of what we do at Novedge. Novedge is one of the largest online stores for design software. We offer a huge assortment of software solutions that cater to virtually every designer's needs. So you just need to visit and check out our extensive catalog. And for more daily software news and limited time promotions, don't forget to visit the Novedge blog and follow us on Facebook, Google+, or Twitter. Coming up next week, diving into VR with Vectorworks 2017. Last but not least, today's webinar is free and is being recorded live. And if you want to rewatch it, you can head on over to Novedge's YouTube or Vimeo channels, and it'll be uploaded as early as this afternoon. And now I'm going to pass the microphone and the screen to Simon. And pretty soon you'll be able to see a screen. There it is. Okay, take it away, Simon.
Okay, thanks very much. So before I get started, I'm going to introduce my business partner here, Nigel Hunt, and he's going to tell us a little bit about SiNi software.
Okay, hi everyone. Before Si gets into it, I thought we should just sort of quickly do a bit of a backstory of how this all began. So Si started working with me, was it 3-4 years ago? And in a busy London production studio where we were doing lots of visual effects, lots of architectural visualization work. Now, Si came on board as the CTO to essentially start working on how we can actually produce work more efficiently and faster. We've predominantly used Max for 20+ years. What we needed to do is actually work out with lowering budgets how we can write our own tools and scripts and really extend Max. So what we're about to show you today is the natural development of what we've done for the past 3 or 4 years. So over to Si.
Yeah, so what we did is we wrote a lot of tools that we needed for Max and sort of our pipeline. And after a little while, we realized that a lot of these tools that were written in Max script really needed to be turned into plugins and made into C++. So everything that we develop now is 100% C++. They're proper plugins for 3D Studio Max, but they combine a lot of the tools that we've used over the years or created or really liked that people have developed out there, but sort of gave up on, and so we just did a rewrite and came up with our own stuff. So mainly what we're going to show today is Ignite, which is our main sort of interface and control panel. It adds a lot of different tools that Max users would use every day. So this is going to be something that you don't add to a render farm or anything. It's just a tool set for each individual worker. The other stuff that we have that we're trying to develop now is, well, that we have out is Proxy, which is our universal proxy. Where we've taken something now that will work with every render engine out there, and you can also encrypt and lock down your files if you need to share them about. So if you were to add something to a proxy, give it a set date, say expire in 2 months, give it a password, whoever you gave it to after 2 months would never be able to render, and you wouldn't be able to export it out after that. So that's sort of our universal proxy. Cyclone is more of a replacement for the spacing tool in Max. We wanted something that was really fast, really easy to scatter objects along a spline and give it a lot of other extra features like texture variation, camera clipping, spline clipping, and to see stuff in real time live. So that was very helpful, and we've used that a lot, so we put that out. And the last one is Forensic. And Forensic is actually a part of Ignite that we give out for free. So if you get anything out of today, go over here and log in, sign up, and just go ahead and download some stuff for free. So when you go in here, you just go to Downloads and try it out. Everything is bundled together in one installer. So even if you are just going to use Forensic, you download, you install everything, and you're ready to go with Forensic. But this also gives you the ability that if someone gives you a proxy, that you can still render it and use it. You won't be able to add your own unless you actually have a license for it, but you can still use it and render it without a license. The other thing is if you need to get any information about any of our products, because we don't have a whole lot of time to go through everything here, then we have a lot of videos up here. And if you go to our Facebook page or anything like that, our YouTube page, you'll see a lot of training videos as well. And then at the last part, before we jump into our product, if you go to our resellers page here, any of our products, just click on a reseller, go there, and you can purchase our products on their site. So now we'll get through the boring part. Let's jump on to some of our tool sets. So our first part is when you first fire up our product, you're going to actually have a login, and it's the same login that's used to log into the website. So everything's sort of the same. You have to have an internet connection to use our products. We decided a while ago that it's just too easy to hack, and we can keep prices a lot lower if we have people logging in. This is the way that Autodesk is actually going to go next year as well. You'll have to have an internet connection to use Autodesk's 3D Studio Max, unfortunately. So that's why we sort of decided to go with that. The tool sets that we have, Ignite itself, this is our standalone plugin that incorporates a lot of other plugins with it. We have a Spline Tools, which is our Scribe. We have Poly Tools, which is our Sculpt, and that does meshing, double faces, retopologize some stuff. We have a Random Transform and Select, which is our Jumble, and then we have Forensic, which is our whole scene checking tool. So those are sort of the stuff that we have out now. In the future, we are going to be releasing a lot more tools in here. This is all going to be part of Ignite. That's why we're doing a subscription program instead of just buying the software. We're going to constantly keep updating this. So future stuff to come out is we have an Hdi Wizard, which you'll be able to bring right in. We are also tied in. We took on Hdi Skies as a business partner, and they help us out. And so when we add this to the interface, you're going to get 12, 16K HDRIs for free with it, and you'll have the ability to add HDRs later on. We'll also be adding an asset manager system, and the way that works is as soon as you actually select an asset in the middle of your scene, it'll turn off all your lights, hide everything, get it ready to render. Actually, I can just show you right here real quick. So say I had a full scene that I happened to be working on, and I didn't want to just take this and save it out and put it into something else. I can simply just open our asset manager. It hides all the lights, builds a studio scene, sets it all up fresh, changes all your render settings, so you can actually add this in to your asset manager. And when you're all done adding this in, and there'll be keywords, search words that you'll be able to do, it'll check your model, but when you're done, you just click on this and it puts it back in your scene, turns all your lights back on, resets all your render settings. So our tools are made to save you time. And then the last one that we'll be bringing out very soon is also our Reunite, which is our relinking tool, which will relink XMeshes, RProxy, Fume Effects, PRT, bitmaps, all sorts of different missing files. So it's a universal relinking tool. So let's just jump right into some of these tools. And what I'm going to go into first, and I'm sorry if I'm going really fast, we have a lot of stuff to show over this time. So we're going to start off with Scribe. And Scribe is basically our whole, anything to do with splines. That's pretty much what Scribe does. So if you were going to go in, and we have some diagnostic tools in here as well, so if we take a look at these splines here and we were to run some diagnostics on this, it's like a good one is find overlapping. It's going to go through and find some problems with these splines. And if we go actually look at this spline itself, you're going to see there's 76 different splines in here. So you end up getting this from a lot of stuff that you get in CAD or all sorts of drawings where stuff's just stacked on top of each other. And it's a real nightmare to go through and clean. So we've just created this where, okay, now I've just checked it. I can select anything that's red, and I can go in here and say detach overlapping, and it just goes through and it deletes, removes all my overlapping stuff. So if we were to go now and look at this spline, it just has one spline. It's a nice closed, clean spline. So a lot of this stuff is where we're, trying to make things that are really easy for people to look at. Another one would be if you had, say, you brought in a drawing, something from CAD, and you wanted to go in and say, all right, well, I want to find all my CAD blocks. It's going to find all the objects that are created with your CAD blocks. You just simply select them and say, delete my CAD blocks, and it will clean it up. But one of our features also is that we've changed the wireframe color of this. So we write to the node itself. So if I just say restore wirecolor, it's gone through and restored everything that I've been working on in that scene. So it doesn't destroy anything in your scene for what you might be working on itself. We are going to get into forensic in a minute, which also does some stuff checking your scene and cleaning up. I sort of went a little out of order here. So the rest of the stuff in here, we have basically, explode splines, attach splines. So if I want to break this all up into segments, I want to go sort of attach, explode all into shapes. Say I want to take all this stuff and say, I want to take this, I'm going to weld it, I want to attach these as splines. It's going to go through and do all this sort of work to sort of help you do things faster. We also have a lot of other interesting things like attach by distance. So it's going to go in and figure out which one of these splines are touching each other and attach by that. We also have attach by wirecolor and attach by layer. So there's a lot, all the little tools that we've been using sort of over the years that we've had in scripts, we've decided to port these over to C++ just to make things easier. There was a couple of our own tools that we sort of wanted and we used in projects that were sort of interesting. So we said, well, if we had a whole bunch of splines that were sort of overlapping and maybe some were long, some were short, and we wanted to say make plots out of this. And if we go in here, we can see this one's a little short. We get a lot of this from clients sometimes, and we needed to make plots. So
bad CAD.
Yeah, bad CAD essentially. So what this does is actually, and I've turned on the mesh feature to it, but if you don't have the mesh feature, it'll go and actually, oops, let me just go up here and set this to individual. You'll see they're all individual objects. So it's sort of all these little tools that we found that we've needed over and over again. We also built in a little bit of a conform as well. So we have all these objects here. And what this does is it'll conform these splines to a surface. So if we just go through, you can see it's easily just glued these splines down to a surface. We did this a little differently than when we did with the Max script, because in C++ we can actually do mathematical calculations a lot faster. So if, say we just had a spline that was, just very simple spline, what we do in this whole project in this is we go and figure out, if you look at the spline itself, we retopologize the spline to what it needs to conform to this surface. So it's not super heavy, but it's not choppy either. So we've just tried to make things nice and easy. We're always looking for also some feedback. If you want some features added to this, we're looking to always add features. We also put in some real lifetime tools in here as well. So say we took a look at these text letters. They're very heavy in knots. If I was to take this here, oh, sorry, one sec, it's a little choppy with the screen recording. If I was to go select this spline now, it automatically optimized this. Now you can go and change this. It's all real time. So you could go in and change that and see what your result's going to be before you optimize it. So there, that spline's done. And then sort of the last thing sort of in this spline tool is we added a curve to corner. If I was to we take a lot of geometry and say, take this and we would want to extrude this geometry, you're going to see it's very heavy and dense around here, and I know a lot of people have always had that. So to sort of optimize this a little bit, you can take in and say, use our curve to corner, and it'll give you sort of a suggestion of what it thinks you would need, and then convert this. Now if you were to extrude, it's going to give you a little less geometry. So it's also smart enough to go and find curves and corners and stuff like that as well. So that's pretty much our scribe tool. We have a meshing tool in our forensic. I think I'm going to jump to our forensic next, which is pretty much our cleaning and checking tools. So here's a good example of sort of some messed up geometry that we got out of Google, the Google Earth tool. And as you can see, as I'm trying to move around this, geometry is disappearing. It's got a lot of little problems. And this comes to, there's a lot of things that can cause this. Pivots being far away, geometry is actually bad, a lot of double faces. There can be all sorts of little problems in this. So I'm going to go and fire up forensic here, and what we'll do is we'll do a quick scan of the scene. Now, we thought about doing this with a real heavy scene to sort of show you guys all the different problems that you could find, but we figured with how taxing it is to load up a heavy scene and having 5 different versions of Max open, we might have problems doing that, and it's a live podcast. So we just did something a little smaller so you can just sort of see what it comes back with. So I'm going to go find you CAD box, link composites, XREF problems, empty objects. Here's a good example. So all of our empty objects that I've selected here now will be objects that they'll have verts, but they won't have any faces, or they'll be splines without any segments, just completely empty, useless objects. So we can go through, get rid of those, delete those, and for say, we'll just delete our empty layers, and we'll also go and fix all of our scaled objects. So forensic's quite useful on really big scenes, bringing in some heavy stuff. And this is our one that is free. So you can go and just sign up to the website, use forensic for as much as you want. We're going to keep adding to this over and over again and updating it. So the rest of this scene here, you can see, is still quite choppy. So I sort of have to do this in a couple of different tools. So first thing I want to do is I want to go use our reset objects. And you can see what reset object will do is it doesn't recreate these objects, but it does more than what a reset transform does. We tend to get geometry that is, we'll have clipping problems and redrawing problems that will come from either SketchUp or Rhino. So a lot of this that we put into our reset object does tend to clean a lot of that up. So then in the next part of this, to clean up this scene, I'm going to, of course, need to jump over to our poly and mesh tool. So I'm going to go grab everything here, and I'm going to do a check for double faces. And this is probably something that you guys see a lot and have a lot of problems with. So it's go through, it's searched, it's found everything in our scene with double faces. And we can now go, I'm going to select all our red objects, and I'm going to say detach all our double faces. And it's gone through all that geometry and found all the double faces in there. So now we can get rid of that. And probably the last thing that I'm wanting to do in this is go through and then probably weld these objects. So I'll go through and weld these guys up. And now this should be a lot more stable geometry to work with. So a lot of these tools sort of came from working, what we did in our pipeline and how to sort of add this stuff in here where it would be useful for other people to use as well. So yeah, there is a lot of tools that we're going to be adding to this. A lot of stuff, if people aren't using some stuff, we might remove other objects. So like I said, it's a new product. There's a lot of different stuff that we can do with this. So we're looking forward to any input that you guys can give us on what's useful for you guys as well. I'm going to jump up to another scene here, and we'll continue on with our sculpt tool. So we've been looking at a lot of ways to retopologize geometry in Max as well. This has been something that's always a nightmare for everybody, and we're going to look at all sorts of different tools that we use that will be combined together in this. Right now we have retopologized plane, which is actually a retopologized more of a terrain type thing. So what this actually does is if you select an object, you'll see a live grid here, and you'll be able to resize that grid to how much you want to retopologize this geometry. And as you retopologize it, it comes up with something that's nice and clean. Now, if you zoom into this, it doesn't have a whole bunch of extra knots or anything on the outside. We're actually doing a complete retopologize on this. We're not just grabbing the outside edge and then putting together splines and welding this together in verts. This is a proper retopologizing tool. And this will work with a lot of different stuff as well. So we have an object here with a UVW map and a texture on it. So if I grab this guy and go do the retopologize, I'll just spin this down a little bit, and I retopologize our new piece of geometry here. It's going to transform that, it's going to transfer that UVW map and texture to your new piece of geometry. What we haven't gotten yet is if it is say a collapsed object, which doesn't have a UVW map on it, it'll transfer the texture, but the mapping is not going to be correct. That is something that's almost an impossible thing, is to remap a fresh piece of geometry with mapping that came from something with a completely different face structure. So we're going to try and look at something of that in the future. Here's a really good example of what you get out of, say, Google's terrain, where stuff is completely overlapping geometry, which is sort of a little bit of a nightmare. So I'm just going to take this, and I'm going to attach this together, and I'll select this, and we'll do a retopologize on this. Let me just bring this down a little bit. And what this is going to do is it's going to go look at all that piece of geometry, and it's going to completely retopologize that. So it doesn't care that you have overlapping stuff. And the reason for this is the way that we've done this method. This method will not work for retopologizing characters or other things like that. Depending on what you're doing, there's a different method for each. And I'm going to show you a different geometry altogether. This is something where we get out of SketchUp. And with this, I'm sure this looks familiar, a stack of boxes. This is our other retopologizer, which is actually built in Colonize. And what this does is it goes through, and as you can see now, this is a nice clean piece of geometry. It works in a completely different way than our other retopologize does. So they're not similar whatsoever. And this is an upcoming plugin that we have, which is called Colonize, and it actually makes whole buildings. And I'll show you an older example of that in a second, but that's what this extra geometry is here. We just wanted to show you this retopologizing method. This is going to be added to Ignite as well. It's going to be called retopologizing massing. And it'll do something as similar with this as well. So if I was to take this, retopologize this piece of geometry, it's going to give me something that's clean as well. So it's nice. Let me just isolate this. It's nice, clean piece of geometry. All the corners are kept. There's no extra verts, knots, anything like that out there. So, like I said, we have two retopologizing pieces now. One is in Sculpt. The other one will be soon. And, let me just retouch on our double faces again. I threw this in the scene. So if I was to go through and just detach double faces out of this, here's a good example of a whole bunch of double faces that were left in the objects. And then the last thing sort of in here, and we do have the same thing as the meshing tools. We have, or sorry, the spline tools. We have a whole explode and attach section here as well. But one thing that we did, we found we used a lot in tools over the time was smoothing, and working with faces and matte IDs without having to throw a, say, an edit poly on top or an edit mesh. So there's no smoothing, there's no way to access material IDs or anything with these objects in here. So if we were to take this and say clear all smoothing groups, it goes through to the base, all the way down to the base mesh in C++ to get where we can actually change stuff around in the mesh without actually having to add an edit poly or anything on it. Same thing works with material IDs. So we can go through and I can say, oh, give me 3 different random IDs on this object. Now I already have a material in here with a whole bunch of IDs. Let me just grab this material. So it's got a lot of different IDs on here, but if I just want to simply say, hey, give me 5 random IDs, and I can just keep going until I decide I'm going to get to something. Now this is another thing that you can't do in MaxScript. That's what makes these tools a little more powerful, is being able to get down to the base object of a node without having to convert it to an editable poly or an editable mesh. Same thing with explode. So we could go now, this guy has different material IDs on it. I can say explode by matte IDs, and now I've exploded this up. So if you had a building that was all attached, you could say exploded by material IDs. You'd have all just the glass, all the brick, everything would all be a separate object, and so exploding it all up into faces. So that's pretty much our sculpt tool. I'm just going to jump real quick back, and I'm going to show you sort of what we were doing with this colonize tool. Let me just close this up, and we'll jump onto this guy. This is a script that we developed, and this is where colonize is sort of going to go. We get so many projects where we need a big background city, and we have sort of massing models and stuff like that. So we wrote this little script, and this is what we're turning into C++ now, where we could actually prep this geometry, and that's going to go, and we're going to, sorry, let me just select this, and we'll do a rebuild. And what this is going to do is it's going to take that information from that massing model, and it's going to build buildings from this. And this is based on a style-based build. So it randomly picks a certain style of a building and goes ahead and builds this building up. So if we just zoom in here real quick, you can see it's got sort of balconies, louvers, sort of a bunch of different stuff going on. If I was to delete this and say, all right, well, go ahead and let's rebuild this again, and I'll just launch this random script, you're going to see it's now a completely different building. It's got a different facade. Now, we pushed this to the limit of what we could do in a Max script. So that is basically where this came in, where we actually had to go and figure out how to retopologize old massing. And that's where this is the beginning of our new script, where it'll be able to take any sort of massing, retopologize it, clean it up, and then we'll be able to build a building from that. So our original whole process when we started building these tools was to build a whole city engine building tool, which will do terrain and buildings. As we've been working on that in the background, we've taken a lot of these really useful functions like retopologizing, getting rid of double faces, all this stuff, and put them into tools. And that's where a lot of this stuff sort of comes from. I'm going to jump into our last bit, which is sort of talking about the main interface part. Oh, actually, I'm going to jump back to that in a second. I have Jumble as well to show you. I'm just going to jump into, just show you where I have this up, sort of what we have in our main interface. This sort of up top here is sort of a basic, gives you an idea of what's going on in your scene. We have a lot of freelancers that come in and they'll be modeling, say, buildings or furniture or all sorts of stuff, and they're not the right scale. They have a lot of, the gamma's not right. There's a lot of different issues with how people work. So what we decided to do in the very beginning was in our original tool set, we wanted everybody to fire this up and know if their cameras are locked down, what scales they're working in, what gamma settings. If something's really weird, you're going to get it in, it's going to pop up in red. If my cameras aren't locked down, it's going to, let me know. But the thing about the camera lockdown, so if we lock this down, what it's done is, even though we've gone and locked down this camera, it's also figured out what's incorporated with this camera. So it's locked down all its points, its pivots, the line that's on there with the path constraint. It knows what to do in this. So if I was even to create a new camera, it now knows I've just created a new camera from view. It now knows there's a new camera in there and lively updates our interface. So that's the nice thing about going into this and having a C++ application that talks back and forth to Max in real time. So a lot of that is, even timeline. Everything can be updated live. There's a lot of good pluses to having an interface that is directly interactive with Max. So a lot of the settings up here have to do with view, hiding or showing lights or cameras, hiding textures, stuff that's sort of in Max, but it's all over the place. So we wanted to sort of isolate everything together and just make it easy to use. Then we also threw in a method to just do a save incremental, clear material editor, because if you get something, say a massive scene with missing bitmaps, the only way to clear that material editor is when you open it up, you wait 20 minutes as it's trying to figure out all the missing bitmaps, or it's a lot easier to just go clear that material editor, open it up, find what you're working with, do a relink then, and save yourself a lot of grief. We have a copy and paste from different Maxes, so if I wanted to, say, take this teapot and copy it from it, well, we'll just take it, we'll copy it here. I'll go into, say, a different Max, actually find something a little emptier. Oops, don't want to open a Max. Go in here, and if I open up and then paste it into my scene, there's my teapot. So it's a nice quick copy-paste stuff from Maxes if you're working back and forth. We have a hold and fetch. We have basically some scripting options here. This is how I do sort of testing of geometry. If I'm scripting all the time, test to get some basic splines. This actually can be hidden if you don't do a lot of Max scripting. You can actually just hide that, go back into Max, and it removes that panel. But it is useful if you're writing Max scripts over and over again, and you need, geometry on the fly or something to test. Also, just a side note is we have made function publishing for all our all our utilities. So if you want to add something to your own Max script tool that uses our find overlapping or delete overlapping or any of that, you can Max script directly to any of our tools in here, which is kind of useful if you're a developer of your own tools. All right, let's jump back to the last one here, which is back to our animation tools. Going down here. I know there's a lot of stuff to sort of show, so I know I am rushing through this quite a bit. We do have, like I said, I'm not going to be able to go over everything. We built our own Playblask system in here, which is our animation preview tool. And you can actually do animation previews in resolutions that you don't even have. So say you have a monitor that's in HD, and you wanted to actually do a 4K or any size screen capture that your video card memory will allow, you can actually do a, say, 4K Playblast even though you don't have a 4K video card in your machine. It's not an up-res. It's an actual 4K capture of your viewport. It's a dynamic viewport, so you actually don't see it on the screen, but we can capture from that. And we're going to bring in the ability to send that to Deadline as well. So if you have long Playblasts or animation previews that you need to do, we're going to add the ability that you can actually send that to Deadline. The next part of this down here has to do with a lot of selection stuff, so instances and all that I'll show you. I'm just going to quickly go over to some of our animation tools. So you can see you have a camera here which is sort of locked down. We have a bacon keys. So if I wanted to bake this camera down, say to every 5th key, it can just do that, and now that camera is all baked down. If I wanted to say, I want to copy this animation to something, so say I wanted to take this animation here that I have of this camera, and I want to copy it to this sphere, we have a copy-paste animation. So if you copy the keys, select this sphere, and say paste the keys, now that sphere has that whole animation. We have go in, delete specific keys, so you don't have to go in and filter your keys down here. I can say, I want to delete all the keys but my position keys. So it's going to go delete everything off of that. Now the only thing that's on that sphere is the rotation keys and the scale keys. We have flip animations. So say you had something, let's take this camera. This might be, no, actually, let's just take this teapot. It's a flying teapot. So if I wanted to reverse this animation, I can say go in here and flip keys, and it will completely reverse the animation of. This is really helpful when you have X meshes with thousands of keys, and you need to sort of reverse the animation or flip keys or shift keys. So we put in a whole bunch of sort of animation tools in here itself that sort of help. Let me just sort of get rid of everything in the scene. Also in here we've added sort of helper objects for people. So we have a sort of people object, and that sort of helps if you're just going to sort of set up a scene, maybe for you want to just do a building, sort of see how big people are, you needed to do an explosion, sort of get reference. That's all this guy is sort of a little reference object. Let me just get a couple more of these guys in here and just copy this one around. We also added a live measurement tool in here. So it sort of will give you a live feedback on distance between objects. So you can see the live, you can see it updating in real time. Your height, all your height, width, your volume. It also works with splines. So let me just draw out a line here. I draw a quick line and turn on the measurement tool. It'll give you the length of your line. It'll give you the width and the height. And like I said, it is all dynamic, so you know, if you tend to pull this up, you're going to see that the Z value goes up as well on this spline. And then if you go into sub-object of our measurement tool, you can see it'll measure the segments as well. So it's sort of just a lot of little stuff in here that's sort of really helpful when you need it. The rest of the stuff in here, let me just throw some test geometry out here again. One thing that Max has always been sort of missing is a good object replace or, say, instance tool. So I'm going to just jump down to our selection stuff here, and I'll say select instance. Now, all these teapots are not instanced here. They're sort of similar, but they're not instanced. So if we wanted to say, let's find all these teapots that are exactly the same, and they are all the same teapot. They've just been rotated, scaled, and all sorts of different stuff, but they're not instants. So we wanted to figure out a good way to do this that's easy for everybody else. So we figured if you just select all the objects that you want to sort through, open up our instance interface, we'll select the object, we'll select this teapot, and now we go instance this. Now you can see it's gone through. It didn't care that it was looking at boxes, squirrels, anything. It just cared about all the stuff that it could instant. So it's gone through now and instanced all these teapots. We also did throw in an object replace in here. So if I was to do the same thing, let's open up object replace. Select everything here in the scene. I'll select this little squirrel, and we say replace everything in the scene. It's going to go through and replace all that. So a quick object replace and instance tool is very useful. Now the other thing is, if you had sort of different objects in here and you wanted to make these unique, these actually happen to be the same object. So I can actually get to this unique button. But say I couldn't, and I had a lot more geometry in here. I can't get to that unique button to make these unique. So we added in a unique button here, which actually does make those unique objects now. So a lot of the tools in here, and you know, like random pivot tools, We have a random pivot. We have effect pivot. So like a lot of the stuff that you do find up in here that's buried that you use all the time, we sort of wanted to throw into this interface itself. We also have, say, straighten object. So you can go straighten an object up in your scene and say you just come back later. Let's just say convert this to an editable poly. And we can turn it back now because it's remembered its old position. So I can actually go in here and say, all right, well, I want to change this around. Let's go do a extrude off of this and add another face to it. We go back and hit this again. Now it's back to its original position. So a lot of these tools that we're trying to put together are to really sort of help people out and just make your workflow a little easier, a little quicker. So this is a lot of our interface. It has to do with this. We also have a whole selection and renaming tools here. So if I say I want to select all just my instances, it's going to go, oh, I made those unique actually. Let me see, do I have a, yeah, some instance over here. So if I go select this guy, it's going to give me all my instances. I can say select by wire color. It's going to go select all the wire color. I can say select similar object to say this box. It's going to give me everything that's similar to that box. Selecting similar is, we sort of did what differently than what Max has. So if you have a box with a bend modifier and a box with a UVW modifier, and you say select similar, or select similar object in Max, it's going to select both of them even though they're not. Ours sort of skips that. It goes checks to make sure that the modifiers are the same, everything like that. Then we also have a select exact, and those are the objects that you can instance. So that's the same thing that our search goes through in instances. It goes through in search to make sure that it's an exact object and can be instanced. We have a whole searching tool in here. So let's see, what do we have? I think they're all, let's say I wanted to find all my objects that are called box. I could go put box star and select by name. It's going to go select all my box objects. So let me just hit inverse and I'll delete all these other. We also have an object rename. So if I was to say select this and say let's name these box thread underscore, it's going to go rename all those, and you can see Fred's in the center. So what we did in our renaming tool is we said, well, you might want to put wildcards before and after. So if I was to say, and let's just take part of these and we'll rename these ones just box. So let's just back up and we'll rename these box. So if I was to go in here and say find me star thread dot star and go find those, it's going to go and filter you a wildcard in the front and behind. So this is sort of a quick search your scene tool and a quick renaming tool. And the last thing that I sort of have out of the front of this interface is we have our own, you can load your own custom scripts in here. So if I wanted to add a script to this interface, I'd just go down here, simply go in here and say, oh, well, here's a script. We'll just load that up. I can name it whatever I want, and every time I open this interface back up, that script's always going to be there for me. So it's just a quick little way of having, so you don't have to have all your scripts in your toolbars or have a whole bunch of shortcuts as well. You have the ability of saving them in your interface. Now in the future, we're going to look at the ability to have a button where you can actually upload all your scripts to the internet, and then if you were working in 2 different locations, you could go log in and download all your scripts to this interface. We're going to take a look. Max is going to be changing a lot of stuff around, so I'm not sure if how much is going to change. I saw a lot with the interface, and hotkeys and toolbars are going to change. As soon as they get this sussed out in the new version and we figure out what's going on, we're going to add some of the saving functions in here as well. So if you say you had your hotkeys all set up, you'd say, go in here and say, hey, save my hotkeys, and then you could go into the office and say, download my hotkeys, and you'd bring it through the interface. So we're just trying to make things a little easier and seamless if you're working in multiple different locations. The last thing I sort of want to talk about in our interface is this tab up here. And we're going to start adding a lot more stuff in here. And I'll give you an example of what this is. This is for our proxy. Our proxy itself is, you can do it individually, but we have a bulk proxy tool in here. And I'm going to talk just basically a little bit about our proxy. The difference with ours is, one, it works with all the render engines, except for Redshift, but we're working on that at the moment, and FStorm, and they're actually just working with us as well. So pretty soon we're going to work with every single render engine that's out there. So there's going to be pretty much a universal proxy. Our proxy has the ability to save it internally to your Max file or externally. And I'm going to give you an example with this. I'm going to select everything in my scene, and I'm going to say I'm going to want these as internal proxies, and I want it to find all the instances, even though they're not instances, and go ahead and make these into proxies. We'll set these to half mesh. It's going to go through the scene, and it's already done. That's it. It's already gone through, figured out what was similar, what it could instance, and then what it could turn, and then turns those into proxies. So even though there was a lot of things in the scene, there was only 3 different types of objects in here. And our proxy as well has a lot of sort of different things in it as well. So if I wanted to say, take this whole one of these that is, I forget which one this is originally, it's our teapot, I can say I want to make this an external file now. So I can just click on this. It's going to say, do you want to switch this? You'll see yes. We'll just call this a teapot and save that. And now that is an external file. The nice thing about our proxy that we've been working on to just try and make this nice and easy is if you need to do an adjustment to this, like say I want to export this back out to mesh, I can just set this. Do you want to take them all out? I see yes. Now they're all mesh objects, so I can simply just go make the adjustments that I need to do. I could go back over here, and I could say now, turn these back all into proxies again. And it goes through and figures all that out. And now all those objects that I've just adjusted are back into proxies. So there's a lot of different stuff with our proxies. We have I'm not sure how we're doing with time.
Okay.
Are we doing okay with time?
Yeah.
All right. We're going to try and get through a little bit of this proxy. There's not a lot to it. It's very easy to use. Pretty much you have your internal, external settings. You have your display settings. You have a hue and color shift. So you could actually say, if we had all these as cars, I could say, well, I want 14 different types of variations in the color. I could go set my hue, shift, everything like that. Now when they render, all those cars are going to have their different hue shift. Once this is done the first time, we write this information to the node. So say you come back a week later, you go render these, that car that was blue still is blue. Even though you're not seeing it in your viewport and they all have the same color texture. It does this just at render time. We have a filtering system in this as well. So if you had trees and you could say, I just want you to do everything but the bark. So if I put bark in here and used our same wildcard, because it might be bark color leaf or bark color branches, bark color trunk, I want to do all the barks, I can add that and say exclude all those textures. So it's sort of a filtering system to include or exclude. We have our camera clip in here, so this is going to go clip and not build all the proxies that are not in your view. If you do enable this without a camera, it's actually going to do your selected view here. So if you were to go, say, selected view, it's just going to take what's in your viewport, and then you have an expansion, and what the expansion does is it doesn't clip stuff that's right at the edge, so those do actually cast shadows. So that's our camera clipping. We have an exclusion spline, so if I wanted to animate a spline growing through these objects, they're going to disappear. So that's spline and clipping. And then this is the interesting part. We have found a way to lock down these proxies altogether. And whether it's an internal or an external file, you can actually go in here and say, set this till, say, next year. Well, let's just set it to next year. Enter in your password. and lock this down. Now this is a lockdown proxy that you can actually give this model out to other people. They can't export it, you can't convert it to editable mesh, you can't do anything with it to take it out. We're using the same RSA encryption that banks are using, and now it tells you that your proxy will expire on this date in 2018.
But you can put a password back into it.
Yeah, you can put a password, if it's your own proxy, you can put this back in now and unlock it. But it gives you the ability to share assets to a certain date and time. So if you're a car company and you were going to put out this stuff, you could lock down your car model, you could give it to someone else to actually, and you can still texture it up, do whatever you want to it, but you can't get to that geometry itself. And then simply at the end, if you wanted to export this back out to mesh, it's going to ask you, hey, there might be some instances, do you want to do them all? In this case, we'll say no, and it's just going to do that one itself. So that's pretty much our proxy. How are we doing? What are we at for time?
Quickly touch on...
yeah. What?
Possibly?
What is it?
Cyclone.
Oh, last thing. We're going to quickly just talk on Cyclone. So I don't have a whole lot of time to go in with this, but Cyclone's a really simple, like I said, a replacement for the spacing tool. So we'll just grab a spline here, and let's just create a Cyclone. Oops. Let's just go up here into the menu, go down to SiNi, and create a Cyclone. And we'll just create a couple objects. Let's just put a plane, we'll put a teapot, and possibly a box. Now, Cyclone's a really cheap alternative. I think it turns out to being about 50 pounds a year for Cyclone. Cyclone's really easy to use. You pretty much pick a spline, and you pick the objects that you want to distribute along that spline. It's as easy to use as the spacing tool. So I want to display this as point cloud, bounding box, all sorts of different display methods. I can take this and I can actually change the order that these are in, so I could actually reorder these. I can take this and say I want this in a random pattern or an ordered pattern. It's all real-time sort of feedback, so it'll go down your spacing. Let me just get a lot more objects in here. And we'll just show this as pyramid. Everything is real-time feedback. So if I was working on a project and I've already had the Cyclone the way I want to do, and I say I want to create a line, it's just going to keep going with your line. So basically it's a very advanced version of the spacing tool in 3D Studio Max. A lot of things that we did do with it was we added the ability to add all sorts of transform to these objects, sort of in and out. You do have random patterns as well, so you can actually random this stuff around. Any stuff you can rotate. You can mirror objects, so if you were doing a parking lot, you could say, I want them to be at 0 and 180 only. It'll only give you that rotation, so cars are either parked forward or backwards. Or you can just go in and say, hey, I just want to adjust my teapot. I don't want to do everything that's in my scene, just the teapot. And then all the rest of the stuff that's in here, we did the exact same way as the proxy. The exclusion splines are the same. The whole texture variation interface is exactly the same. The camera clipping is exactly the same, and the export. So I could export this out as multiple objects or single meshes. So now that I've exported this out, I have a single mesh. So it's not even something that if you were sending it to a render farm that didn't have our tools, you could still just take this out and use it. So like I said, it's a very, very simple tool and easy to use. So I think that's about all we have to show you guys tonight. If you want to find out more about our tools, like I said, go to our website, follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and we also have a forum on our website, so just go in there and you can ask any questions you want. So
Hi, Simon.
I think we're ready for
Yeah.
So
Yeah, thank you so much, Sai and Nai. I have a couple of questions. There's a few questions that came in. Does the
Yeah.
software require really huge graphic cards?
No, no. Actually, I'm using an old K4000 in this machine. This machine's quite old. And I was able to do, I'm guessing this is the question about the play blasts or the animation preview. I have quite an old video card in this, and it has no problem spitting out a 4K animation. The reason we added, and I'm just going to jump back to this, let me just open up our interface real quick. The animation tool, the reason we did this is because if you wanted to do an HD animation out of this, and let me just bring something in here now. I'm going to set this to, I'm not sure how this is going to work with the capture software going in the background, but if I want this to clay, I'm going to set this to, say, 2 seconds, and I'm going to capture a still image of this. And hopefully you're still hearing me now. Right now, it's captured a full 4K image of that screen capture. Now, that was quick with clay and everything like that. You can set this up for a duration of whatever you want to get nicer shadows. Or usually what we'll use it for is we just do a hidden line render, which is really fast. So if we need to pump out, say, 1,400 frames of an animation in HD so the guys in Nuke can start working with it, this is a perfect way to do it. So even though it's going to go through and spit this out, it makes an MP4 file, and it also makes you the stills. Hopefully that answers your question.
That answered the question.
Yes, thank you. And the second question is, are there tools to help with the workflow going from Revit to Max to Unity or any other VR platform and the tedious process of mapping UV?
Unfortunately, we haven't done anything with mapping UVs yet. It's on our list of stuff to add. The reason we didn't jump into that very first is there's quite a few unwrapping tools that are out there that are really good. It's sort of a similar thing to us making a render engine. There's so many of them out there. So, I mean, eventually we're going to get around to it. Our pipeline right now, like when we bring in stuff from Revit, the one thing we want to do is bang, right off the bat, we want to scan it because it's filled with CAD blocks, it's filled with link composites, it's filled with empty objects, negative scaled objects, which doesn't affect too much in ArcViz, but if you're doing simulations or you're doing a lot of animations, a lot of this stuff really matters. So one thing that we do all the time when we get in Revit or anything like that is we'll run forensic and check it, and then we'll go through and we'll reset all the objects that are in the scene. And that does a good job. And then after that, we'll get into the workflow of, like I showed with the city, looking for double faces, trying to weld geometry together till we have something stable, and then we'll go ahead and start texturing it. But at this point, with Revit as mapping stuff, no, not yet.
All right. All right, so I have 2 more questions and a little feedback. This attendee is saying, thank you so much for developing such a masterpiece. And yes, 2 questions. The first is, can your measuring tools measure V-Ray light geometries on the scenes as well?
Light geometries. Are you talking distance between light geometry? I'm not sure what.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Oh, lights. So measure the distance between lights. That's a good question. I've never tried it. Let's give it a go. What can go wrong?
Cool. I love you're so hands-on.
All right, so if we take that and we do a measurement, yeah, it doesn't seem to care what it's measuring. As long as it's a node in Max, it shouldn't have a problem with measuring stuff. So yeah, you could probably get a daylight system and measure how long the sun is, the distance between that. Yeah, it shouldn't give you a problem with that.
Cool. And the second question is, how about measuring imported geometries from applications such as Revit and SolidWorks? Is there any ways that I can import my keyframes from other applications? for instance, like SolidWorks?
Not at this time. That involves something a bit different. What we have is we built tools that work inside of Max. What that person is asking for, and a lot of other people have asked for this, it's not an unusual one. We need to write an importer. And that's what does a lot of that work and heavy lifting. Right now we're sort of reliant in how Max gets that geometry in, and then we're dealing with it. Probably writing an importer is something that's in our future as well, but right now we haven't done it. So yeah, we're just sort of dealing with what is in Max at the time. So taking in keyframes, no, that's sort of something that an importer would do. So if you were to import a piece of geometry from Maya, the problem is the X, Y, and Z is different. And so your rig character would be all messed up, and importing that in, that's why someone created the Alembic file, was so that stuff could be imported in that was animated. But that, you can't really work with that. So yeah, it's something that hopefully we'll look at in the future, but sorry, not right now.
Okay, that was it, and many thanks. The feedback is great, so convincing. So good, well done. Do you guys want to remind everybody about the special promotion we have now that we're recording this session and it will go all over the stratosphere?
Yes. Right now we have a promotion with you guys, our resellers at Novedge. We have Proxy and Cyclone are 30% off, and Ignite and our All Access package, which is all of our products, are 20% off, all till the end of the month. And like I said, Forensic is always free. So go sign up. We are just coming off the end of our beta. So lucky for you guys, if you go sign up right now at the website, till the end of the week, you'll be able to use this software and try some of this stuff out. We're switching over to our new website, but to get this promotional price, you'll have to buy it this month.
Okay.
Oh, we probably can't hear.
No, it's just switched over to.
Asking where they can.
Sorry, hello?
Okay, so sorry. Where they're saying where they can download Forensic again. Is it your website, right?
Oh yeah. Let me just jump up to that real quick. Sorry.
Okay, I will share your screen so you can.
Yep.
So then.
Okay. So what you want to do is go to our website. Mm-hmm. You're going to need to click on this big button here, or register a new user. And you'll go through register. As soon as you register, log in, and you just go to download products. And right here, this is our newest one, 1.01. So you're just going to click on this and download that. That has Forensic. It has all the tools in it, but you'll need to download the full installer to get Forensic. So Forensic is free for everybody. So just log in, create a user, download this stuff, and you have Forensic. Your login for your web page is the same login for our software. So the first time you fire up our software, you're going to see this screen here, Decipher. So you're going to enter in your username, your password, and you're just going to log in, and that startup screen is there. Now, you can set this to close on startup. So every time you start up, once you've logged in, when you fire up Max, it's going to not start up again. To get to that utility, you need to go into utilities and find it. Or you can make a button for it. But you really don't need it. Once you're logged in, you're logged in. And you'll see that Forensic's always free for everybody.
That's great. Fantastic. And for everything else, there's Novedge, where we also have 3ds Max. How convenient, a one-stop shop for all your design need. And, oh, right?
We're trying to change Max around completely. We want to make it so user-friendly again. That's why we're putting all these tools out there.
Thank you, guys. I'm sure your effort is appreciated everywhere. And I also want to remind everyone that today's presentation has been recorded, and you can rewatch it on our Novedge YouTube and Vimeo channels. And we have a huge webinar playlist, and you can find, webinars for all software taste. Thank you so much, Simon and Nigel. That was really great to have you on board, and we're very excited about having your products on our catalogs. Thanks again. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye for watching.